I now recognize Mr. Brecheen from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, thanks for being here. Today, earlier in this committee, you said I use a lens of reasonableness in defining operational control when you were talking about if we have operational control at the border. So I want to kind of go through a series of comments, and I want to discuss the concept of being reasonable. Under your watch, the Biden administration, we've had over 4.5 million people encountered entrance illegally into the United States, the highest ever in the history of our nation. That's more than the population of Oklahoma, the state of which I am in service of. And I would contend that's not reasonable. I've got in front of me here 11 different places where your office is in violation of federal law or regulation. Happy to supply this. The will of Congress, the will of the people. And my office just sent you a letter about one of those in regards to this expansion of parole instead of on a case-by-case basis. It's designed to give 30,000 illegals entrance in the United States to lower numbers, to make the numbers look better. I would contend this is not reasonable. I want to talk about tax dollars and the way our tax dollars are being spent. El Paso, the sector is overwhelmed. DHS right now, at one of 9 sectors, El Paso is spending $90,000 per flight, sending 4 of them per week to another sector of the wall area, border, and just to process them. And I would contend this is not reasonable. It's just a reshuffling of the deck chairs to make sure El Paso is not overrun. Because of climate ideology, as my colleague just talked about, you all's request to spend $91 million for electric vehicle charging stations, $32 million for electric vehicles, which is not going to secure the border. It's not going to. There's a chance those vehicles could run out of energy, and its adherence to the Church of Nature. I would contend it's not reasonable. Last month, your Border and Customs Patrol leader, the chief of the Border Patrol, oversees 19,000 of our patrol agents, testified to this committee that he disagreed with President Biden's decision to shut down construction of the border wall. What is reasonable, and I've heard it talked about a couple of times, that you're in constant communication with him, I would contend would be to listen to your expert, the guy who's in constant communication, those 19,000, who disagrees with that decision. And so let me kind of give the context of this. In 2021, the CB report said that there was $15 billion that was allocated to build or rehab a wall, the wall on the southern border, 738 miles of that with $15 billion. Around 450 miles was completed in the prior administration, the Trump administration. And then President Biden, within his first 30 days, said not another foot. He shut down what was appropriated by Congress, 250 miles of border wall construction. And he made the statement, not another foot. Because of this, the Department of Defense then had to spend $2 billion to terminate the contracts that was for something that Congress said needed to happen. I would contend that's not reasonable. It's not a good expenditure of the taxpayer monies. And it's usurping Article 1, Section 1 that says that all legislative powers should be vested in the Congress, not by executive order letting the president undermine Congress. Now we continue to spend $130,000 a day to store and maintain those sections of wall rusting and wasting on the ground. It's not reasonable. You were, in looking at your history, you were under President Obama. You served as a Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security from 13 to 16 when Obama built a 150-mile of wall in tandem with the Secure Fence Act of 2006. The Biden budget that now proposes, you all proposing to spend $4.7 billion for a Southwest Border Contingency Fund that's set up to deal with the surge. We look at it as a slush fund instead of building physical barriers. And I say physical barriers because I think it's important to note you served under an administration where you at some time adhered to the belief in physical barriers. There was a time where both Democrats and Republicans believed in it. Don't forget that President Biden, when he was Senator Biden, voted for the Secure Fence Act, which included physical barriers. It's not reasonable where we're at when the experts, even serving directly under you, are saying they disagree with that decision. Do you agree with your expert, Custom and Patrol Border Chief Raul Ortiz, who said before this committee last month that he disagreed with Biden's decision to shut down the construction of that 250-mile border wall that Congress appropriated funds for?
Congressman, I stand by the decision of this administration to cease construction of the wall. I should say.
Can I just reclaim my time if it's okay?
That I have approved the closing of approximately 129 gaps in completion of gates.
Mr. Chairman, just a little diligence here, 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Okay. You were secretary under Obama. A 150-mile border wall was built. You were secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Do you disagree with what Obama directed your office to do in during your time there?
No,
when Democrats agreed with Republicans about fiscal barriers?
There's a three-part solution with respect to security: personnel, technology, and barriers. The wall is a particular discrete aspect of barriers with which we respectfully disagree.
Thank you. The gentleman yields.